What's up, guys? We are finishing up our little mini-series here on T.S. Eliot's brilliant masterpiece of a poem, The Dry Salvages. I want to thank you, first and foremost, for joining me on this little mini-series. I had a blast with it, and hopefully this touched your soul in some way. I think at the very least, it's a poetic expression of what Gebser is expressing intellectually or intellectually. I was going to say rationally, but it's not really rationally, right? This is a great compliment to Gebser. It's just, like I said, it's a qualitative poetic expression that complements the quantitative mental expression. We're going to be doing sections 4 and 5 today. Section 4 is very short. I really don't have a ton to say on it, so we're going to be talking about section 5, and I'm very excited because this is some really good stuff. Again, also, I would really appreciate it. You don't have to do this, no hard feelings, but I would very much appreciate it if you guys left a comment and told me how this poem affected you. Was there a particular line? For example, for me, time the preserver is time the destroyer, or if you want to reverse it. I've quoted that probably 60 times since I read that 2 weeks ago for the first time. The future for most is a wistful song of regret for those not yet here to regret. That's a beautiful line that has really affected me. The pain of others abides, unqualified, unworn by years of subsequent attrition. That's another insight that was beautifully captured. So let me know if there's something in that for you guys, and it would really just fill this cold heart of mine. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, section 4. This is Eliot. Lady, whose shrine stands on the promontory, pray for all those who are in ships, those whose business has to do with fish, and those concerned with every lawful traffic, and those who conduct them. Repeat a prayer also on behalf of women who have set their sons or husbands setting forth, and not returning. Figlia del tuo figlio, Queen of Heaven. Also pray for those who were in ships, and ended their voyage on the sand, and the sea's lips are in the dark throat, which will not reject them, or ever cannot reach them the sound of the sea bell's perpetual angelus. So, just like the last videos, we're going to do the first, read it fully through, then go line by line, and then read it fully through again. So, lady whose shrine stands on the promontory. I believe, as I wrote down in my book here, where'd it go? That is the Virgin Mary, or Stella Maris. And the reason why I mentioned that, I'm not a religious person. I didn't spend a ton of time going to church growing up, so I'm pretty ignorant when it comes to Christian matters. But when I saw Stella Maris, I couldn't help but be reminded of the last Cormac McCarthy book, which I do plan on reading at some point. I'm sure that's relevant with Cormac. So what do we got? So Mary, Virgin Mary, pray for all those who are in ships, those whose business has to do with fish. So of course, remember, the sea represents the vast expansiveness of the external, of the eternal, of time, almost in a spatial sense, in a quantifiable sense. It just kind of keeps going. The vastness of the world and the external. So we're praying for all those whose business has to do with fish. So there are aspects of the world. There are a fish is something you would capture, of course, something you would take and eat or sell. Well, that's kind of what we're doing with the world. Like, we are taking contents of the world, making them our own, selling them, trading them, do with our own purposes. So again, I think that's a symbol just representing this is what we do. We strive in the world, particularly in the West. We create external things like governments and buildings, and then we take them down with airplanes. That got kind of dark. And those concerned with every lawful traffic and those who conduct them. So think about Jimmy McNulty in season 2 of The Wire, where he goes out to be a boat cop. Same thing. Those concerned with every lawful traffic and those who conduct them. Well, trafficking of fish. So not only are we capturing fish, not only are we achieving things externally and passing them down and doing all this great stuff, but we also have concerns with lawful traffic, which to me is an obvious gesture at morality. Well, yes, we can do this, but let's do it morally. Let's not steal from others. Let's not lie to others, that kind of stuff. Repeat a prayer also on behalf of women who have seen their sons or husbands setting forth and not returning. So notice, repeat a prayer. This is a very somber section, of course. We're praying for those. We're not, and not in a good way. Usually, and I say this as a non-Christian, when you pray for someone, they're going through something rough and you want to help them, magically lift them. So this section is a pretty dark, brooding section, in my opinion. So the women who have seen their sons or husbands setting forth and not returning. So think about, this could be an obvious reference to war. That'd be a classic example. The consoling, grieving widow who, think Saving Private Ryan. That's a good example. there's a reference to the negative side, which we're going to tie in at the very end of this section. Figlia Dale tuo figlio, Queen of Heaven. I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure what that means, but I think it's a reference to Dante. Also pray for those who are in ships and ended their voyage on the sand, in the sea's lips, or in the dark throat which will not reject them, or ever cannot reach them, the sound of the sea's bells perpetual Angelus. I'll be honest, I struggle with this one. Those who are in ships and ended their voyage on the sand, in the sea's lips. What did I struggle with that one. I'll be honest, I forgot to write something down on that. Damn, I apologize. This section, in my opinion, I think it's incredibly based from a 4D integral perspective, because what this is an acknowledgement of integrating the bad with the good, right? So we're doing integral consciousness, which means we integrate the whole, as opposed to the rationalists who want to oppose parts from each other and then privilege one or the other, right? So we integrate good and evil, good and bad, as exemplified by this beautiful section. The rationalists pit good and evil, or good and bad, against each other and privilege good over. No. Eliot is far too smart for that. In awakening time freedom, in awakening the integral whole, well, we're going to have to acknowledge the elephant in the room that the rationalists want us to ignore. But I understand the elephant is big and scary and monstrous. Nonetheless, he's still here, and he's going to stomp on us unless we acknowledge him. Okay. So now we're moving on to section 5. This is a beautiful section, and this is where it kind of climaxes, so pretty good. All right, this is Eliot. To communicate with Mars, converse with spirits. To report the behavior of the sea monster. Describe the horoscope. Horoscopate or scry. Observe disease and signatures. Evoke biography from the wrinkles of the palm and tragedy from fingers. Release omens by sortilege or tea leaves. Riddle the inevitable with playing cards. Fiddle with pentagrams or barbituric acids, or dissect the recurrent image into preconscious terrors. To explore the womb or tomb or dreams. All these are usual pastime and drugs, and features of the press, and always will be, some of them especially when there is distress of nations and perplexity, whether on the shores of Asia or on the Edgware Road. Men's curiosity searches past and future and clings to that dimension, but to apprehend the point of intersection of the timeless with time is an occupation for the saint. No occupation either, but something given and taken in a lifetime's death and love, ardor and selflessness and self-surrender. For most of us, there is only the unattended moment, the moment in and out of time, the distraction fit, lost in a shaft of sunlight, the wild time unseen, or the winter lightning, or the waterfall, or music heard so deeply that it is not heard at all, but you are the music while the music lasts. These are only hints and guesses, hints followed by guesses, and the rest is prayer, observance, discipline, thought, and action. The hint half guessed, the gift half understood, is incarnation. Here the impossible union of spheres of existence is actual. Here the past and future are conquered and reconciled, where action were otherwise movement of that which is only moved and has in it no source of movement, driven by daemonic, chthonic powers. And right action is freedom from past and future also. For most of us, this is the aim, never here to be realized. Who are only undefeated because we have gone on trying. We, content at the last if our temporal reversion nourish, not too far from the yew tree, the life of significant soil. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right, let's go line by line, huh? We're going to do this whole paragraph again, because you might as well just do it all together. To communicate with Mars, converse with spirits, to report the behavior of the sea monster, describe the horoscope, horoscopate or scry, observe disease and signatures, evoke biography from the wrinkles of the palm and tragedy from fingers, release omens by sortilege or tea leaves, riddle the inevitable with playing cards, fiddle with pentagrams or barbituric acids, or dissect the recurrent image into preconscious terrors. To explore the womb or tomb or dreams. All these are usual pastimes and drugs and features of the press. So essentially what he's saying is he's agreeing with Gebser that everything subsumed in this paragraph right here is essentially, to put it in Gebser's language, the mythical and magical structures attempt to attain the spiritual. So all this stuff about palmistry and horoscope and the sea monster, and we're communicating with Mars and conversing with the spirits and pentagrams and playing cards, which I imagine would be a reference to tarot cards. Yeah, that's nice, but that's magic and mythical structure stuff. We're in integral structure, which includes the mental. Um, so to do all this, I think what he's saying, in addition to what Gebser is saying, is this is pseudo spirituality. This is fake spirituality. This is bullshit spirituality. Spirituality of the future is conscious, it is mental, and it is clear and transparent. Uh, so all this stuff, nah, not playing it. And you can tell that's what he means when he says, all these are usual pastimes and drugs and features of the press. So features of the press, I think, is a reference to the sensational aspects of these. We associate them with spirituality because they are so sensational, but they are pastimes. And what's America's favorite pastime? Baseball. That's essentially what he's equating these. When you take them seriously on their own attempts, they're supposed to be attaining spiritual truth, but Eliot has reduced them down to watching a game. Now, I like going to Camden Yards as much as the next guy, but it's not a spiritual moment, especially not with the current O's, okay? Maybe if Cal Ripken was back there, we'd be talking different, but not the case. Let's see. So we have the shot at the press as well, this idea that the press is sensationalizing things, which I think is relevant. It doesn't really speak to the spiritual themes of this, but I do think it's relevant because it probably was a reference to the war. That would be my guess. So then he says, men's curiosity searches past and future and clings to that dimension. Let's see. But to apprehend the point of intersection of the timeless with time is an occupation for the saint. Let's try that again. Hold on. But to apprehend the point of intersection of the timeless with time is an occupation for the saint. If you follow my Gebser series, this should be a dead giveaway that we are in time freedom. Point of intersection, does that not sound almost spookily Gebserian? What is Gebser's whole idea? The human being is the center of convergence of all the consciousness structures. Great. Also, the human being is the point of convergence, the center of convergence for all the layers of time. Time as a quantity, time as a quality, psychic temporicity, chronogeneity, space-time, all the different forms of time, magical timelessness, mythical cycles, mental clock time, calendar time. We are the point of convergence, where they all meet and integrate and affect our actions, all right? And that, I think, is beautifully expressed with this idea. And in addition to the allusions to Gebser, which, to be clear, I'm not saying Eliot consciously did this. And I think this was written, actually, when was this written? In the 40s, maybe. But I don't think he consciously referenced Gebser. That'd be a bit silly. But when he says the point of intersection of the timeless, read as time-free, because, of course, Gebser, as we know, as Gebserians, timeless belongs to the magical structure, the one-dimensional point. That's not what Eliot is talking about. Eliot means time-free, not timeless. Timeless needs to be read as time-free. And it explains T.S. Eliot's famous line that history is a pattern of timeless moments. That sentence, understood properly, makes no sense from a rational or irrational perspective. It makes no sense. It took me like 10 minutes dissecting that phrase to figure out what he was going for. And once I realized, wait a second, he doesn't mean magical timelessness. He means time freedom. Everything clicked. It was like the easiest. I was like, oh, so you just do that. Okay. So that is beautiful. The point of intersection of the timeless with time is an occupation for the saint. So in addition to Gebser, he's associating time freedom with spirituality. Pretty cool, huh? And that's really what this poem is about. It's about awakening time freedom, becoming consciously aware of the fact that we are that center of convergence of all the multiple layers of time. None of which are really privileged over the other. It really just depends on what situation you're in. Take my girlfriend, for example. This morning, she was up with the baby, and she slept past her alarm, and I happened to wake up in time, shook her, and she went to work. Okay, now's the time to focus on time as a quantity, right? But if my friend or my daughter, say, is coming to me crying because she's getting bullied, now it's time to focus on time as a quality. Now it's time to focus on psychic temporicity. I'm not making appeals to 5:35 p.m. or whatever. All right, so that is what this poem is about, and it is beautiful. All right, so where are we at now? Okay, and then he says, no occupation either, but something given and taken, and a lifetime's death and love, ardor and selflessness and self-surrender. So what he's saying is the occupation of the saint, which I read as the spiritually driven man or the spiritually awakened man, is time freedom. But he goes very quickly, he says, but it's not really an occupation. Now think about that. Whether he realizes it or not, I think he's making a gesture to the mental structure. Occupation, that sounds like goal-driven, purpose-driven mental structure stuff. I love it. I think it's amazing. But that's not what integral consciousness is. So when he says it's not an occupation, it makes it seem like time freedom cannot be achieved like me building the White House through rational application of mental tools. That's not what it is. Time freedom is awakened, and it feels like in the moment from a source that is beyond you. Now that source could be your soul, it could be, if you insist on using rational terms, your psyche, or it could be some spiritual external thing. But the point is, he's rejecting this idea that all we have to do is logically think this stuff out. Let's see. For most of us, there is only the unattended moment, the moment in and out of time. Now, what does that mean? Now, remember, unattended makes sense when you reference the previous 4 or 5 lines when he says the time freedom was a job for the saint. Now, the saint is consciously focused on spiritual matters. That is what they do. So, the saint who awakens time freedom has the attended moment because he can awaken time freedom consciously because he has transcended rationality, transcending the limits of the quantifiably measurable and consciously known, going up into the spirit, and therefore awakening time freedom. Awesome. So what does that mean when he says the unattended moment? Well, the unattended moments, the moment in and out of time, the distraction fit, lost in a shaft of sunlight, the wild thyme unseen, or the winter lightning, or the waterfall, or the music heard so deeply that it is not heard at all, but you are the music while the music lasts. So notice the level of clarity that follows the unattended moments. The unattended moment are moments of spiritual or transparent clarity that grip us from whatever source that is, but it just happens to us. It's not something like the saint where we consciously awaken this thing, right? I'm consciously healing the patient. No, the patient just heals like that. Essentially, this idea, because it's unattended, spiritual clarity, spiritual transparency only emerges in flashes. As Eliot would say, there are only hints and guesses, hints followed by guesses, and the rest is prayer, observance, discipline, thought, and action. So we are compelled by these spiritual flashes, but because we have not integrated, because we're rationalists essentially, because we haven't awakened integral consciousness, we're too busy grasping in the dark. And the great irony is, paradoxically, the rationality, the tool used to illuminate the natural order of the world and allow us to participate in that order, is actually what's blinding us. So the light has darkened everything. Oh, that's funny. The hint half guessed, the gift half understood is incarnation. So that's what he calls this moment of time-free spiritual clarity. Incarnation. The saint attends to this moment where most of us, going day by day, do not. It's kind of like that Greg Freeman song. Most days I pass with my head in the dark, but today it seems so clear to me. There you go. I mean, that's a perfect way of describing it. And then, actually, now that I think about it, the song Colorado by Greg Freeman is where that's from. There's another line in that song where he says, to boredom, hold on, what does he say? Driving through Colorado, I thought of these things. To boredom, the weight of reality rings. So I thought that was cool, because that's like time as a quality, right? Like the moment is bored. So let's get back on track. Okay, so now he's going to describe this last little part, time freedom, spiritual clarity, spiritual transparency. Let's get into it. Which he calls, of course, the incarnation. Here the impossible union of spheres is actual. Do I need to say more? Again, I said this in a previous video. The sphere is the prototypical symbol of integral consciousness. Here the impossible union of spheres. So not only is there a sphere, there are multiple spheres, and these spheres have been divided from each other. This division, of course, is a reference to rational thought. And the impossible union of spheres of existence, i.e. spheres of consciousness, well, the union obviously references integration of these spheres of being. Here the past and future are conquered and reconciled, where action were otherwise movement of that which is only moved and has in it no source of movement, driven by daemonic, chthonic power. So time freedom has conquered and reconciled, and I think that's a very important word. Well, how do you reconcile past and future? Well, we've just reconciled it by recognizing that its effect is present at all times. Past and future are present through shaping our present, yes. And it's been conquered. So your simple, quantitative, direction-driven understanding of time must give way to time freedom. Get out of here. And right action is freedom from past and future also. How beautiful is that? How beautiful is that? We already talked about that with Krishna, right? Don't act in the moment by trying to actualize some imagistic future you conjured up in your head. You don't even know when you're going to get home off work or what mood your family is going to be in when you get off work. For example, sometimes if I get off work late and I know my family's probably asleep, I get excited. I get to watch a movie, maybe crack a few beers, play some fucking PlayStation, do whatever, maybe read a little bit. It's not always like that, okay? The future that I conjured up in my little head here, okay, that's some... I don't know, it's an entitlement that derives from my ego. Because sometimes I get here and, it's like a war in here. Yeah, the baby's not asleep. The wife is upset because the baby's not asleep. So I realize, hold on now, I need to adjust and change my behavior. That's time freedom. Not assuming the future was mine and then, okay, well, you guys do whatever you want. I'm going to ensure my future. No. That's not right action, as Eliot explains. For most of us, this is the aim never here to be realized, who are only undefeated because we have gone on trying. We, content at the last if our temporal reversion nourish the life of significant soil. So that is the state of time freedom, the transparency of the perception of the integral whole. In my personal opinion, I think it's an absolutely incredible, amazing expression of integral consciousness. As a matter of fact, hold on. Now that I think about it, I was supposed to mention this in my last Gebser video, but I ran out of steam. Okay, I'm going to read a paragraph from Gebser to finish this up, because what he's talking about is the literature section of The Ever-Present Origin, which is an amazing book, and he's talking about how time is becoming a thing in all these different domains, and now we're commenting on literature. Listen to this. The fundamental transformation in England begins with the quote-unquote sober intoxication of William Blake and with the unpretentious temporicity of William Wordsworth. It is ultimately achieved by the Jesuit Gerard Manley Hopkins, who reveals in every aspect, via syntax, meter, rhythm, and vocabulary, the new fundamental tone, the new consciousness structure. This it acquires to such a degree that his poems were not even published until 20 years after his death. Holderlin's late poetry had become accessible only a few years before, and even then there were difficulties of understanding it until finally in England the quote-unquote new tone became established via the work of the American T.S. Eliot. In the first half of our century, T.S. Eliot, Paul Valery, Georges Guillen, and R.M. Rilke are the most prominent poetic representatives of the new consciousness structure. So, hopefully, this series was an explication as to why Gebser, in all of his genius, and I say that sincerely, would identify Eliot as an amazing expression of integral consciousness. Hopefully, this series has identified why. So, again, it would really mean the world to me. You don't have to do this. No hard feelings. I do appreciate you watching. All good. Please stay subscribed. Love you guys. But it would really mean the world to me if you guys left a comment. Why did you continue to stick with this series to the end? You could have quit at part 2. You could have quit at part 3. You could have quit at part 1. But you didn't. I want to know why. So let me know what lines hit you, what insights hit you, and if it sparked a new love for poetry. I love you guys more than anything. I will see you soon, and hope you guys are thriving. Thank you, guys.